I'm Nathalie Mezza-García and welcome to the Floating Cities Show. Here, you'll learn about the latest floating projects, developments, houses, buildings, neighborhoods, floating city plans, and the regulations, zones, and jurisdictions that enable them all across the world. You'll hear directly from the makers, the architects, designers, developers, engineers, and even the regulators that make floating projects possible. Come join me while together with Seaphia, we help you navigate the complexity of these new waters. Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard. I'm here with Giuseppe Carussi. He is the person who, within the company Giancarlo Zema, is in charge of the implementation of the technology in the architectural systems. How are you?
Fine. How are you, Nathalie? Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. I'm very good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I'm very excited because we're going to talk today about many things water. On water, underwater, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's start with, before diving into the topic, let's start with what attracted you in the first place to working with designs and architecture and projects that involve floating and water.
Yeah, okay. It's actually a passion for the water, for the sea in general, which is part of my life. Coming from a town on the waterfront, I've always been involved with it. So for me, it's a natural element, and so of course it gives inspiration in many ways. Being sort of a technical geek or technology geek, I was always attracted to the underwater world. And so although I do have an underwater license, it just isn't satisfying enough for me. Yes, exactly.
Okay, diving.
Swimming, diving is a beautiful thing, but it's limited. It's limited in time. It's limited in things you can do. So that brought me to develop water toys, basically, not only, and all the way to the end, which is the final submarine I'm working on right now. But at a certain point in time, a good friend of mine, who is Giancarlo Zema, a very creative architect, called me up and says, look, why don't we combine my architecture, which is biomimicry architecture and eco-sustainable architecture, with the things which are futuristic in technology, that can actually work, that can actually take them to the next level where they are efficient. And so that's when we started working together and creating things that would be energetically self-sufficient or, however, very, very efficient in a way, if not totally self-sufficient. At the same time, the ability of Giancarlo is that to give technology a shape, which is a beautiful shape.
Yes.
So it's nice to look at because you don't want things to be so technical, like the poles. A pole is a pole, but it's so simple and straight and ugly that nobody actually notices them along the road when you walk. So, and you do want to live in a place where everything talks to you because the architecture communicates.
Yes.
and you want to have the feeling of of that communication. You want to look around and smile. You want things to get in sync with your nature, with yourself, with your inner self. And this is all an artistic approach. Which can be utilized in architecture as well as in technology. A beautiful car and an ugly car. It's the bodywork. The technology inside is basically the same.
Yes.
But then what focuses your choice is the exterior.
Or even the interior. In the case of Tesla, it also technical decisions become design decisions and vice versa, and it makes a difference.
Exactly. So that's where technology combines with art, with the looks. You can give technology the looks to appeal, and so that's what we do together. And we push ourselves forward. We've been actually pushing ourselves much forward. The waterness that you would like to talk about is actually a project which is 10 years old.
Okay.
There are other projects you can see by Giancarlo Zema Design Group, like the Trilobis yacht, which is also that age. And at that time, 10, 15 years ago, we were talking about using hydrogen fuel cell technology when everybody was actually didn't even know what that was about, basically. And that's the reason why many of these projects are actually taking shape only today. Today, there's much more awareness.
Yeah.
There's much more, and also thanks, you don't want to think a pandemic, but actually thanks to the pandemic period, there's a lot more awareness in biotechnology and in climate change, as well as preservation, and so the importance of let's say biosustainable materials or eco-sustainable materials used also in architecture is very important. And now they're coming back to us with our designs, which are actually from some time ago.
Along those lines of making simple, functional things beautiful, you have some, I'm going to repeat again that. So I don't know if referring to them as Luminix pumps or solar power green stations.
Well, the Luminix systems are used in the Green Islands, but they are a production line, actually. Now, Luminix was a company founded by Giancarlo as a startup sometime back, and by Giancarlo Zema. And he is still the art director for Luminix. Luminix is the company that now produces Luminix products, because the brand has been sold to that company, is called Siderpali, which is in Italy. And Siderpali was bought by Mitaş Group, which is a Turkish group now. But still being art directors in the company, Giancarlo curates the looks and the new technologies and everything. And we also sell the product on and we place it on our projects. So we still utilize that. But the advantage is that now it's produced. So we get it off the shelf. Anybody can get it off the shelf. So it's in production. It's not something which is, let's say, purposely made for that project. It's something which is available to everybody to buy.
Cool.
As a matter of fact, we are also working on a project in West Palm Beach for a square with this kind of technology, as well as other parts of the world.
And what are in itself these palm-shaped structures?
What are they?
Yeah. For those who are listening or watching and don't know, what are these palm-shaped structures?
Okay, these are steel structures that house a big solar paneling into them. They have both they can be palm leaf shaped, or they can be simple poles with a smaller palm leaf, the big leaves. Those can be for park illumination and obviously generating solar power. And they can be used on the recharge stations for electric cars that you see in the Green Island project.
And how do you envision that these palms are used in floating projects? I think you've already done it, no? In the water nest?
No, we're in the process of offering a project, which is the Palm Village project in Maldives, which is not actually a totally floating project. It will have some floating parts, but it will have a causeway where these palm trees can be set, one for each apartment. They can be used on floating structures. Why not? And obviously they can generate up to 1.5, 2 kilowatts of power, which is enough to power a small apartment. So each one of these, the interesting is to build the system. It's not one tree alone. Once they're in a system where there are many, and that generates a small, let's say, power
network.
A network.
Agreed.
Right.
A green grid.
Exactly, a green grid that can be used to power other things as well. And this in places like remote islands or naturalistic areas is very important.
Yes.
The
connectivity of the systems seems to be a recurrent topic in your work. Whereas that is infrastructure or the transport systems, or in general, the technology that underlines bigger developments that people are already thinking about a lot, but most people tend to focus, or most groups tend to focus on the design of how the building is going to look. But not many people are thinking about the structure of the city, let's say the floating city in this case, or the entire floating development, and the connectivity that's going to take to get that thing off the water. So
exactly.
Where does your work sit there? Why have you taken this approach, and why do you think it's important?
Well, that's actually the point. There's a lot of people, a lot of companies, important companies doing architecture, even eco-sustainable architecture, and very beautiful architecture. But it's basically, a lot of times it only comes down to a beautiful design. And some of the things you see are practically impossible. Everybody will say it will be solar powered, it will be this and that, but nobody actually designs it into the architecture. When we go into a project, like you will see also the hamamelis, the vertiports, etc., we think about the technology that goes into it to power it. And when we put a design out, we know how much it's going to produce and how to produce it in terms of energy. And so it's in the initial design process. There's a pre-engineering in the Giancarlo Zema Design Group that we do to make sure that we don't come out with flights of fantasy, but what we propose is beautiful in the looks, but at the same time possible, not impossible. So when we say, for instance, the water nest, that is going to produce 4 kilowatts each nest, 4 kilowatts is humongous, but we have 60 square meters of solar paneling on each apartment. 60 square meters of solar paneling. When you put all those together and you have 10 of those, you have a huge amount of solar power that you can preserve, that you can actually put into power banks that can power things on shore. So you have a solar farm basically, but you have that, and we have the technology, and the technology is inbuilt into the design. So it's not only beautiful, but it's functional, it's real, it's realistic, it's tangible. And that's our approach. We do things which are not fantasy, they're realistically feasible.
Yeah, so talk to us a bit more about the solar power vertiport, Hamamelis. What is it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, first of all, I think the Giancarlo Zema Design Group is one of the first architectural companies to get into the vertiport design business. We did our first project, which you will also see on the web, which is the Baobab for Yihang, the Chinese company Yihang, for naturalistic areas, because in China they have the permission to fly manned flights, people in naturalistic areas right now, not in the city. They'll get to that before we do in urban air mobility, but in the meantime, yes.
We're talking about drones, for those who don't know.
We're talking about drones.
A vertiport is...
It's an airport for drones.
Passenger drones.
Yeah, exactly. So this is also the future. It will probably be, let's say, more tangible by 2025, 2026 and on. Because regulations are on their way. But in China, they have already they're already a step ahead under this point of view. So it was necessary to have a vertiport which could be fit into naturalistic areas with a small footprint, eco-sustainable, and that could fit in with nature. And that's why we came out with the Baobab. Now, the Baobab, I'm talking about the Baobab to get to the Hamamelis, because the Hamamelis is the development of the vertiport for more city, let's say, utilization.
So it's it ends up being imagine a bus station, but instead of a bus station, a passenger drone station for a city on the water.
On the water. So the Hamamelis is a floating vertiport, actually. We thought that since the regulamentations, the laws do not permit right now flight over towns, and that the first vertiports, according to us, will be on water. So they'll be on rivers, lakes, and let's say bays and other areas where they can reach certain places without having to fly over people's heads.
Interesting. So that's why, maybe in China, that's why the regulations started with enabling passenger drones in natural areas, because you don't pass through people's windows. So
Exactly.
super interesting. There's always regulations. We
Yeah.
always have to talk about regulations when we talk about architecture, infrastructure, and especially innovation. Whereas
Exactly.
because the regulations that are in place don't let you innovate, which is often the case, or because sometimes they do enable that. Interesting. Okay.
Exactly. And after this, we thought that the hamamelis would be fit for places, for instance, like Venice, where in Italy, because the Venice is mostly on the water, so it is a floating city, if you want.
Yeah, that's
the
how
most
it's
ancient floating city in the world. So we thought, why not? We need to build something which is good for these areas, because those are most likely the first areas which are going to utilize this technology. And we built it in a way, as you can see, the solar leaf trees can be any color you want. So they can adapt to any kind of architecture. And we not only have the solar leaves, but we also have the wind towers as well that we can set in to produce more energy according to the places. The hamamelis is made in such a way that it has a very vast solar surface. Enough solar surface, and you don't see it by the image, but the landing pads that you see there, those also will be solar pads. Okay. Those solar pads, there is a company which is called Solapave, belonging to a friend of mine, who is in collaboration with us, makes these solar panels, which are actually have housed inside LEDs for lighting. They're heated so they can melt ice and water, and they're always dry. They can give signaling, and they have Wi-Fi transmission.
Okay.
So that way the drones can land on the pads and be recharged in Wi-Fi without having to hook up batteries and other things like that.
So like when you charge your phone like this,
exactly.
but you charge the
Same
drone
thing.
on touch.
Exactly
that is so cool.
So as I said, we are looking forward to and looking ahead on technology because we want to get the most of what is available and the best of what is available to put into this type of architecture. And that's basically to make it more efficient.
While making it attractive.
Exactly.
Cool. One of the most visually appealing projects that my personal taste, I really love the water nests and how they look. And they just seem to integrate so well with nature, and the tone is so natural. So can you talk to us a bit about the water nests and why the furniture? Because it also has a very unique type of furniture.
Yeah. Okay, the water nest, as I said, Giancarlo Zema is very sensible towards biomimicry.
Yeah.
And that's the reason for the water nest. If you want to make a house on the water, a floating house, and you want to look at animals that have homes that float on the water.
Yeah.
So that's the reason of the water nest. The water nest is 98%, I'd say, made of totally recyclable materials, inside and outside.
Okay.
The water nest has 60 square meters of solar paneling on each water nest, which is 100 square meters of living space. So it's very big, actually.
Yeah, it's big. You can fit very comfortably even three rooms.
Yes, we have different types of divisions and conformations that you can see on the site, and you can look that up in ecoflowlife.com, which is a site for the water nest. And this means that 4 kilowatts production can, as I said before, if are interesting to put in connection, maybe in a resort with 10 or 20 water nests, which will give you a solar farm, basically, that can power things on land as well, because there's plenty of solar production of electricity production from that.
You can send back to the grid.
Yes, you can sell it to the grid, basically, also. And that's the top part, but this is very particular. This architecture is very particular in many ways. Not only the solar paneling, not only the recyclable materials, because the exterior is all made of natural wood, grown by certified forests, so regrown wood, controlled wood. Each water nest we study, we take into consideration where it's going to go, the climatic particularities of the place where it's going to be set, and we utilize the best adaptable wood to that, which is normally a native wood to the place, which is more resistant to the climate. So therefore, there's a research for all of this. The bottom part is like a yacht. It's aluminum or steel with compartments, and all the functions are in the compartments, like in a boat. Okay, so it's basically you have all the services under the floor, and it's all powered by its own solar system. Inside the water nest, you can see also the furniture. The furniture is cardboard, pressed cardboard, that Giancarlo Zema designed for a company that now produces it, so you can buy it. It's available to buy because it's on the market.
I've seen chairs.
That's wonderful. It's called origami. And so you can look that up. It's made in Italy. It's very, very resistant. And we make basically all the furniture, from beds to tables, restaurant furniture, anything can be made out of that kind of cardboard settings.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad you like it, because it's a confirmation that you can do beautiful things even with cardboard. Why not?
Yeah, no, I like it. So I see also that you do the bar. There's a bar here. So when people are in bars, they're drunk often. What type of treatment do you do for the cardboard not to get wet and fall apart, for example?
Well, of course you can't keep it out in the rain, but it's actually it's pressed on the vertical side. So when you press cardboard together, there's many layers, it becomes very, very resistant.
Yes.
And at the same time, it has passages.
Yes.
So if you spill anything, normally it will go down to the floor to the bottom. It's also treated in a way that it is a little bit, let's say, hydro repellent.
Okay.
So nothing will happen if you pour a glass of water on it. It's resistant enough for something like that.
Yeah, now that I hear you talking, it reminds me, the cardboards that cats scratch on them really hardly, and there's all sorts of everything there, from catnip to toys to sometimes water to, I don't know, cat vomit, because cats vomit a lot. And those things they last a long time, even if they're specifically designed to be ripped apart.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Maybe you don't want the cat scratching it, but it's okay.
This will be the dream house for a cat. Oh, for me, yeah.
And you know, it's so easy to do things like that. It's that seldom, no, I mean, frequently, when somebody designs furniture, they don't think of using cardboard or materials like that. So
No.
it's a question of what can I do? It's actually it's a way of not taking anything for impossible. Let's say if you want to do things with sustainable materials, there are plenty. And it's been demonstrated. I mean, there are people who do fabrics with leaves and things like that.
Yes.
So it's possible to do things like this, and it's very nice. And the results are very beautiful as well.
And unique.
And unique, yes.
Yeah, which gives it like a plus, an added value there.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think it takes for... So the approach that I see, what you bring to the table is very connected to infrastructure and to taking big visions and breaking them down into actionable small steps that are needed to get to the big vision. And I see that reflected in your work a lot. And I want to ask you, what do you think it would take, or what does it take so that it becomes more normalized? Or do we even want it to be more normalized, or should we not?
Well, normalized in the sense that it should be more available, or it should be more utilized.
Yes, more utilized.
Okay, yes, I think it should be. It's a mission. We're in the eco-sustainable architecture business since more than 20 years. When we were talking about eco-sustainable and designing eco-sustainable, and Giancarlo Zema Design Group was offering and selling as eco-sustainable projects. For instance, it was not in Italy. It was basically in the Arabic countries.
Okay.
Because Europe wasn't quite into that vision, and neither was the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, whereas maybe the Arabic countries with a lot of money to spend were more attracted by design,
Yes.
and you could fit the eco-sustainable project into it as long as the design was super cool.
Exactly, yeah.
But they had money to do it. If you went to somebody in Europe, or for example, for us in Italy, they would calculate how much is it for the square meter.
Yes.
And compare it to normal housing.
Yeah.
You don't do that. When you want to do something eco-sustainable, you know it's going to pay back. Ultimately, it will, but of course it will have a higher cost.
Yeah,
efficiency, technology, and materials and beauty and everything has a cost.
Yeah.
If you want to do it properly, you can, and you're sure it will pay back, but you have to be prepared to spend the money to make that project. So only now this type of awareness, you see, with the Green Islands has started to blossom, and also in Europe, in Italy, and in other places. So that's what I meant when I said that it took 20 years to get our work appreciated as it is today. But in the end, we're happy about this. We're happy because we see where the world is going. We see that there's more awareness, and we see that these things that are now possible, we are prepared and know how to do them because we have a background of 20 years on this type of things.
Exactly.
that has given us expertise on what
Yeah.
we do.
And now you are even involved, or some of your partners are even involved with something that is also going to be core of the future, that it's having more awareness every time, and it's vertical farming, and most innovatively underwater vertical farming, right?
Yes.
So
Okay, this is part of hydroponics. There is the paternity of this project belongs to a project called Nemo's Garden. Nemo's Garden belongs to Ocean Reef Group, which is a company that makes underwater equipment.
okay.
So masks and breathing apparatus and things like that. This company belongs to an Italian, which is Sergio Gamberini, with his son Luca. They came up with this project some years back because they're from Liguria area, where the basil comes from, where the famous pesto is made. And so they had weather problems. One year pesto wasn't growing, there was terrible weather, and they thought, okay, there's let's say the temperature underwater is more or less constant. Currents aren't that much. Maybe we can build a sphere underwater, that a greenhouse underwater. And they tried that with experimenting, and finally they came up with the biospheres. And they built 5 of them off the coast of Noli, near Genoa, which can be visited, and so on. In these biospheres, they're able now to grow anything from strawberries to tomatoes to beans to greenery, anything, most things. And it utilizes the evaporation water from inside to water the plants underwater. And so it's in about 10 meters of water, not very deep. And they're anchored to the sea bottoms. So you swim in, there's air inside, and they have these spirals where they grow the vegetables. We thought, and we asked them if we could use their technology, their biospheres, into our resort projects. So what you see in the Palm Village actually wants to be a village that not only procures its own electricity, but grows its own food underwater.
Nice, which is going to be extremely important when we are thinking about larger scale projects like floating cities.
Exactly. Yes. Absolutely. So, how are you going to get your food? Fish farming, it's part of it, but who's going to give you your vegetables? And fruits? Which are an important part of our diet. And you don't want ships coming in every day with tons of things for the people. You basically want your floating island to be self-sustainable, also under the food production point of view.
Absolutely. And in terms of the regulations for Nemo's Garden, how were they able to place them? Did they have to ask for permissions, or they just...
Well, these are experimental. So they're clubbed with the University, I believe, of Pisa for experimenting on these systems. So it's actually under experimentation. It's not a fixed, let's say, installation. It is a fixed installation, but experimental, let's say. But these systems could be used in areas where desertic areas that can't grow food on land but have water and could grow food in the water, for instance.
And I assume that because because of the water evaporation system, the well, you don't need to water the plants.
Yeah, as I said, they collect evaporation water from inside the sphere, which is made of polycarbonate. It's so what happens is the heat in the water evaporates. It goes it collects around the sphere and then falls to the sides. And there's a system that collects the water and waters the plants automatically.
Wow. So for communities that have a water body but have drought seasons, that can be super useful because you don't need to wait for the rain.
Exactly. As long as the water is clear enough that sun shines through it, because obviously at that you still need a light spectrum to help grow the plants.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That is extremely cool. You are creating the future. But here, the future is here. It's now.
We try to put together a lot of friends with valuable projects like Nemo's Garden that can be actually integrated in what we do, and we can integrate them into what we do to create more awareness, to create more experimentation, and to finally bring floating communities to a reality. For instance, the Maldives are very sensible to the floating community projects because they are one of a bit like French Polynesia. They're going to suffer the effects of water increase in the future, and they don't have hills; they're flat atolls.
Yeah,
which means they'll go underwater.
Yeah.
So they're to preserve the community, they're going to have to go floating before probably anybody else does.
Yes. Especially the Maldives, whose economy is very much tourism based, and a lot of these tourism bases, honeymoon villas, and these are not floating, but they have stilts. So cool.
So that's where we are proposing solutions like this. And we are proposing also that they should go electric on the boating, which they are sensible to. And drones also will be part of their future as well. Yes. Because the drones will be very useful in floating communities. More than airplanes or helicopters or things like that, because it's going to be short distances, hopping from one floating community to the other or to the neighboring.
Yes. Today, when you visit French Polynesia or the Maldives, you go island hopping, like bar hopping, but island hopping. So, makes sense to do it on drones from a station to another station to another station, different days, as opposed to helicopter.
Right. So cost is infinitely lower.
Or airplane. Cool. Yeah. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Who knows?
What comes next?
What comes next? Okay, what comes next is a difficult question. I think what comes next is from the floating to the underwater world. We need to connect the surface with underwater. So we'll be looking at above and underwater resorts. Not only above or only underwater, but the two need to be together. And that makes sense under many points of view. In shallow waters, because nobody wants to go to the extreme depths. Especially because this is basically initially it will be very touristic. But in future, it may be even, let's say, for communities to grow and to live and to strive on, as long as they become self-sufficient.
Yeah, think about it like cities. Cities are flat, kind of, but they also grow up. So if we're on the water, the place to grow is a bit up, but also down. So it makes sense that they go together. It's what will come together with density. Once density comes for floating, then you go down or up.
Yeah, up to a certain limit. It's the, if you think about it, and yet I'm still referring to biomimicry in a way, or at least natural. You should think about, in my opinion, you should think about the iceberg. The iceberg does have a small mountain on top, but 90% of it is underwater.
Yes.
Because this gives stability.
Yes.
But it's the natural developing sense of the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, cheaper to make, to build too, because you have to focus less on the buoyancy. You have to focus more on the buoyancy if you build up.
If you build up, it's basically very unstable because it's a pendulum.
Yeah.
So you need, either you anchor it down or you build it downwards so that the upper part is very stable.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm imagining really cool designs based on this conversation.
Yeah, you'll see them soon.
I think you're right. Yeah, the future of floating is underwater. So you're always one step ahead.
Well, no, it's only logic. I don't want to be. I mean, we try to look ahead. It's true, but this is under the engineering point of view. This is mechanically how stability would work in water. So it's only natural that you build that way, according to me. That's my point of view. But
yeah, no. I agree with you. Biomimicry, which comes with billions, 4.6 billion years of expertise, would agree with you too.
Yeah, you want to look at the experts.
Yeah, exactly.
If it works for them, it'll work for you. So.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. So, well, Giuseppe, it's been great to talk to you. I'm sure that our listeners and viewers enjoyed it a lot. So thank you so much for your time and for talking to me today and sharing the really interesting work that Giancarlo Zema Company and you and your Nemos Garden Partners and all the other companies that you work with are doing, and you, of course.
Thank you very much, Nathalie, and it was a great pleasure. Anytime.
Cool, then we'll repeat it.
Thank you. Sure.